I was sitting at my desk wondering what exactly I could add to my content, and something occurred to me. I've been wanting to do in-depth looks into each of the characters of the main six, their backstories, motivations behind what they do, and their relationships with other characters. Today we're going to start off with a pony everyone knows and loves. She's a dork, she's so adorable, she's, in a word, adorkable. It is, of course, none other than the Lavender Alicorn Princess Twilight Sparkle. So, first, let's talk about Twilight's personality. Twilight is certainly one of my favourite characters when it comes to this particular area. Her personality feels very relatable, not because she reads books, but because there's just a little nerd inside her that jumps at every opportunity she gets to show off her nerdy talents. When I get to, anyway, strut my stuff, showing the world what I know about ponies and other such subjects, it feels relaxing. I assume it's the way Twilight would feel in such a situation. Underneath this whole calm and collected organizer we see on the surface, she has a very psychotic dark side. Shown in the episode Lesson 0, she can become obsessed with one thing until it can become very destructive and stops her from living her normal life. Coming so soon after Party of One, it wasn't as much of a shock as Pinkamena was. Seriously. That was fucking scary. So, Twilight is a Canterlot-born pony, but doesn't carry with her any of the mannerisms typically seen in Canterlot on many occasions with its citizens, though this could be due to her limited interaction with the nobilities of Ponyville, spending most of her time with either her brother, her parents, or Princess Celestia. And it's my idea that Celestia and her weren't on as formal terms as you would probably assume, and from what we've seen, none of the aforementioned characters behave in such an upheld and classy way in front of Twilight. It may very well be possible that Twilight simply chose not to act the same way the others did, as she, in general, treated almost everyone else with complete apathy. What this tells us is that Twilight's lack of interaction with other ponies and making friends was more damaging to her than I had previously assumed. Because of this lack of empathy with others, this further shows that her adherence to deadlines is borderline fanatic, because they matter more to her than her own well-being. This reasoning is strengthened by the presence of one of the most dominating figures in her whole life, especially during her childhood. Princess Celestia. She wasn't just doing research because she loved it to begin with. She was trying to impress the pseudo-god of Equestria, and she was always deeply focused on how this one pony would perceive her actions. This led Twilight to be actually kind of terrified of Celestia, because it's the one thing she fears above all else, disappointing her authority figure, mother figure, and goddess all in one. These three simultaneous perceptions of Celestia create a dissonance between the two characters, and it's very noticeable. Twilight's response to Celestia's arrival in Ponyville during Lesson 0 wasn't one of joy or of someone who's come to fix everything as you'd probably expect, but of sadness. Twilight simply lowers her head and accepts her punishment. Given up, she knows that she's failed. In a word, she was defeated by her own teacher. And despite all of this, she is aware of the love that Celestia feels for her, as she feels for all of her subjects. But the fact of the matter is that Celestia is a princess, total authority figure, and because of this pedestal she's been set upon, being known as student to the ruler of the land, the pressure creates this apparent disconnect we see in some episodes. This also brings into question another one of Twilight's defining relationships with her number one assistant, Spike. Twilight hatched Spike during her entrance exam into Celestia's school, when she became the personal student of the ruler of the land. So let's analyse that for a second. We can assume that Twilight played a heavy role in the upbringing of the baby dragon. Twilight and Spike clearly have a very closely knit relationship. It could be due to Twilight's new responsibility of taking care of a baby dragon, along with being the student of the Princess of the Sun. The pressure of all that made her ultra organised and paranoid of getting things wrong. Maybe due to something that happened during the course of her taking care of Spike, like some past trauma. Something brought to my attention over the course of Season 4, however, is Twilight's ascension to Princess. But what some people don't know is that this was actually the course she was taking ever since she moved to Ponyville. This society works heavily off of the concept of destiny after all. What? Don't believe me? Well, let me convince you naysayers of why I am absolutely correct. Cutie marks. So, cutie marks are supposed to represent a special talent, and more often than not, a pony's name is relevant to their particular cutie mark. So that means that no matter what the pony does, they are only ever going to have one cutie mark. No, not in that way. I mean that the pony was always going to get that cutie mark. The one they get is the one they were always going to get, which I find to be fascinating and quite restrictive. More restrictive than our world, because if a pony gets a cutie mark in, say, plumbing, then their role within society will always be expected to be plumbing. It doesn't matter if they like singing or dancing. Plumbing is their destiny, therefore they must do it. Let me give you a few examples. Twilight Sparkle, Rarity, Silver Spoon, even Princess Luna. The list goes on and on, but the point is, destiny plays a large role in the lives of these ponies. Specifically Twilight Sparkle, who experiences something called the hero's journey, which I will explain to you. The hero's journey is basically a template for the narrative in which the protagonist goes through these series of events. Now, let's go through this list point by point, and over these I will show you how well Twilight's development fits into this model. Well, it's not really a model because it's so loose, but let's move on. Number 1. The Call to Adventure. This stage, the Call to Adventure, is clearly the moment where Twilight is sent off to Ponyville by Princess Celestia to prepare for the upcoming Summer Sun celebration. It's the point where she is sent away from Canterlot and those she knows into a part of the world she knows nothing about, meaning Ponyville, and where she will ultimately fulfill the quest. The adventure continues until the end of the episode. This next stage is the refusal of the call. Basically the time between Twilight arriving in Ponyville to the point where the Summer Sun celebration will begin. We can see that she's pretty adamant to not make any friends, just to get in and get out before any pony can say surprise! Number 3. Crossing the Threshold. The next stage is Crossing the Threshold, in which Twilight has defeated Nightmare Moon and has gained a +5 to friendship. Now that Twilight has truly begun on her journey, it is time for the next stage, which is Number 4. Trials and Challenges. A stage I am tentatively calling Trials and Challenges, in which Twilight grows over the course of series 1 to 3, gaining new abilities and making new friends. Everything is going perfectly for Twilight until Number 5. Revelation and Transformation. Until her friends switch cutie marks caused by a faulty spell which Twilight casts. But when Twilight finds the revelation, she finally completes the spell, and it leads to transformation, turning her into an alicorn, which leads into the next stage, which is Number 6. The Return. This is the scene in which Twilight arrives back in Ponyville, now an alicorn, with her friends now in awe of her newfound power and role. Also, Twilight's a little bit taller now, don't know why, but that's okay. So anyway, this is my analysis of the character Twilight Sparkle. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more of it, tell me in the comments which pony you want me to look into next. Who knows, I may end up doing it. See you later, every pony.